where news comes first. This is ABC 7 Extra.
Welcome to ABC 7 Extra. Good evening. I'm your host, Dylan McKim. For the next half hour, we are talking about back to school. In less than 2 hours, the calendar will flip over to August 1st, and that spells the end of summer vacation. Tonight, we will look at the upcoming school year. How are districts going to keep students safe? A big question for parents after the tragedy at Robb Elementary School in May. And what about the COVID learning loss? How do districts plan to catch kids back up academically? And how are districts collaborating with each other this year? To talk about these topics are the superintendents from El Paso's top 4 school districts. We will talk with them in just a few minutes, but first, Las Cruces Public Schools have already started their first full week of the new school year. Those same questions of school safety are on the minds of parents in New Mexico as well. This past Wednesday, the school district hosted an open forum for parents on school safety. Local and federal law enforcement, along with the school district, answered questions for parents. ABC 7 was in attendance, and we want to show you the highlights of some of those questions and concerns parents had for leaders.
Tonight is a night to ask questions.
Parents and grandparents gathered in Las Cruces City Hall Wednesday night with questions and concerns on school safety.
Do they have to wait for a supervisor?
A lot of questions about police response after seeing the images from Uvalde where officers waited over an hour to take out the gunman. Las Cruces Police Lieutenant Joy Whittala trying to ease concerns.
We are trained to go in and stop the threat, even if it's just one of us.
This school year, Las Cruces Police says there are school resource officers in every high school and middle school, but none in elementary schools. Superintendent of Las Cruces Public Schools, Ralph Ramos, says officers would be able to get to elementary schools quickly.
These officers are very available to be within elementaries as rapidly as they can, within seconds, minutes in some cases.
But some parents say SROs should be in all schools, no matter the cost or staffing.
And the safety of our kids needs to be paramount, period. Not having those in elementary, give me a break. It absolutely makes no sense.
In the Texas House investigation report on the Uvalde shooting, it was discovered the school had a culture of not locking doors. One mother at the meeting says she noticed something similar when she picked her son up after school was let out, right before this meeting.
I noticed that one of the staff members had placed a rock in a door to keep it open. And I want to say that struck me very hard.
Another mother claiming a group of adults snuck into her son's school last week and threatened him and other kids.
If security is the main focus in a school, how was someone able to sneak into the school?
That mother telling ABC 7 there's an open investigation into what happened. ABC 7 asked the superintendent how the district was going to make sure staff were in compliance with school policies like locking doors.
That's a huge priority, is getting all stakeholders, really educated on some of the protocols.
And joining me now are those 4 superintendents. From EPISD, Superintendent Diana Saavedra. From SISD, Superintendent Dr. Nate Carmen, YISD Superintendent Dr. Xavier De La Torre, and Clint ISD Superintendent Dr. Juan Martinez. All of you, thank you very much for coming on this show tonight. Are you ready for school to start here?
Absolutely.
For the school to begin. Well, let's go ahead and talk about school safety. We did just watch the open forum there in Las Cruces. A lot of those same questions in New Mexico, of course, are on the questions for parents here in El Paso. First, let's start with Dr. Martinez here on the right. What, if any, changes did you all make to school security for this upcoming year?
Well, prior to this tragedy on Uvalde, we were fully prepared already, but we have SROs in every one of our schools. We have armed officers. The larger schools have 2 officers. So as far as changes, basically, it's additional training, making sure that we're following our protocols already in place. Prior to maybe last 2-3 years, we have access to cameras in every classroom, basically, not just the hallways, but also in the classroom. So we know exactly what happens inside those classrooms 24/7. Again, making sure that our teachers carry their microphone. The microphone that they carry is actually an alarm system as well. So we just want to make sure that they understand that it is not just a teaching tool, but it's also a safety tool, and therefore basically training, additional reinforcement of the protocols that we already have.
Okay, Dr. De La Torre?
Yeah, I think
consistently across the districts, you're going to find that it would be a misconception to believe that the schools were not safe prior to the incident this past May. When we all tell our parents that safety and security is a priority, we take that very seriously. And so we have the elements in place, whether it's the perimeter fencing around all of our schools, whether we expect all doors to be locked on our buildings, whether we expect teachers to lock their doors, interior doors, anytime students are present, in addition to the closed circuit camera system that we have at the single point of entry at all of our schools, and the surveillance cameras located both on the exterior of our campuses as well as the interior of our schools. What we're looking at is more likely, I would say, there has been a vigilance, a level of vigilance added relative to training and explaining our procedures, our expectations for all staff, teachers, staff alike, relative to the doors, and drilling and training so that we know exactly what to do should something unforeseen or unanticipated happen.
Ms. Saavedra?
I would echo what my colleagues have shared. We as school districts, safety is a high priority, so our schools have been safe and our students are safe. I think that the big piece here, and I believe Dr. De La Torre alluded to that, is that consistency is going to be our greatest strength, where complacency would obviously be our greatest enemy. So consistency is key. So once you train your staff, once you have all of the physical elements in place, it's really up to every person, whether it's a teacher, whether it's the office staff in the front, whether it's the police officer, every person, even parents, we all have a responsibility to be vigilant and to be consistent and to understand what it really takes day to day, the small things that really secure our school buildings. So it's a team effort. I would say that in addition to what my colleagues have shared, we're really working to collaborate very closely with other law enforcement agencies. Our state troopers have reached out to us and are working with us so that they can provide significant presence and additional patrol, especially at our elementary campuses where there may be a little bit of a vulnerability there or more concern from parents. I would also share that we're working closely with the El Paso Police Department so that we can secure additional officers. I think that the public also needs to know, just as we're dealing with teacher shortages, law enforcement is also dealing with issues and shortages in terms of filling their vacancies. So again, the more that we collaborate and the more that we understand that keeping our schools safe is everyone's responsibility, I think that we have a greater chance of ensuring that we don't have a tragedy occur in El Paso.
Dr. Carmen?
So I'm going to echo a lot of what my colleagues here have stated. We're fairly consistent with our safety protocols and procedures as far as the perimeter fencing and forcing one point of entry for all visitors. They get checked before they come into the building. We also have the number of SROs that we will have one officer on each of our campuses this year, and we have positions that as we fill them, we'll put a second officer on each of our comprehensive high schools. We think that, of course, that will reduce the response time should something occur. But the training for us also was a large piece of it. And following through, not just with the campus personnel, but we have trained hundreds of child nutrition staff, transportation staff, hundreds of substitutes, so that before they enter our buildings, they know what the protocols are and procedures are while they're on those campuses. So for us, really the largest change was making sure that our training was done so in an efficient manner.
We had Representative Joe Moody right here last week on our show talking about that House Investigation Committee report into the Robb Elementary shooting. I asked him, does he think this report should be required reading for school districts across the state? He said he agreed. Did any of you read that report?
Yes. I've read parts of it, but I think it also should be required for the state to provide more funding for security, safety and security of our students.
I have a question to this. So in that report, it was found that Robb Elementary School really had a culture of not locking doors. They were not compliant with the policies they had in place. They were using magnets, putting rocks in the door. We heard at that Las Cruces Public School meeting, even this first week of school, a teacher or a staff member putting a rock in the door. I know the TEA will be, or the state is trying to have random tests this year to make sure that all schools are following those protocols. Like you said, Ms. Saavedra, complacency, a lot of teachers, a lot of staff, even at Uvalde said, this isn't going to happen to us. We didn't think it was going to happen to us. It does. How are you all going to make sure teachers are staying compliant with the protocols and the safety measures you have already put in place? We'll start with Dr. Carmen now here.
Certainly. So we have personnel on each of our campuses that are responsible for ensuring that doors are locked, not propped open with a rock or any other type of device. Additionally, we have district personnel who on a regular schedule will be testing the outside doors to ensure not just that they are closed, but that the locking mechanisms work on all of them. So we have a regular scheduled review for each of our campuses, personnel assigned to do so. So we will do regular checkups to ensure it's followed through.
Ms. Saavedra.
And those are exactly what are part of what we do naturally as a school district with when we implement monitoring systems. Anything that we do in the school system, it's not necessarily just implementing, it's also developing systems to monitor and make sure that the expectations and the outcomes that you want, that you're able to monitor whether you're moving in that direction. And so absolutely what Mr. Carmen mentioned about putting systems in place to spot check personnel whose responsibility is to consistently check the exteriors of the doors. As you said, TEA is coming in and they will be doing audits. Part of what we did proactively as well is we went through this summer and we audited every single one of our buildings so that we could determine what the vulnerabilities were and really provide the necessary support to any campuses that might be more at risk than others. I think that the other thing that we've seen, and I've seen this from our principals and our leaders, you know, messaging coming from us as superintendents, but our principals also are messaging, and the messaging is consistent. And so they're working collectively as feeder patterns to do peer audits for each other. And so going to their campuses, walking their campuses, making suggestions to their colleagues so that they're collaborating as leaders together to make sure, again, that this is a team effort and not something that they're solely responsible for at their campus.
Dr. De La Torre?
All of that would be true. That is that there are certain expectations that you have of your administrative team at each of their respective campuses. That one has risen to the top, and that is to put the system in place that would allow for consistent and periodic check of exterior and interior doors at all of our campuses. In addition to that, the Ysleta Independent School District feels like the time has come to explore, to study the possibility of having our own police department, much in the way that Socorro ISD and El Paso ISD have had for some time now. But as Deanna mentioned, taking police officers and bringing them into the school makes them unavailable for the El Paso Police Department. And we're both aware of that in our conversations, that a school district may be in a better position to offer a better compensation package. But in essence, what we're doing is we're taking peace officers out of the community and we're putting them on our campuses when we already know that the El Paso Police Department is short on staff. So we have to find a way to really collaborate. We currently have a memorandum of understanding with them. The incident that occurred at Bel Air High School toward the end of the year, I think, was a great example of how prepared we were. We had 45 officers from 6 different agencies on campus in a lockdown, probably within 15-20 minutes, and they were canvassing the entire school. Everybody followed the protocols, one of the most difficult being when you hand off the command to the appropriate person. So it goes from the SRO at the school, the minute that the law enforcement agency arrives, the highest ranking individual in that law enforcement agency assumes responsibility until one of his or her superiors arrive, and it all went according to plan. So what was unfortunate and very disruptive, interrupted the school day for the students at Bel Air High School, turned out to be a great exercise in seeing it live and being very, very happy with the outcome. As always, you debrief. The one thing that I don't think any of us can control, and that we get a lot of criticism for, is when something like this happens, parents get upset because they're not notified immediately, right? or they had to learn it from their student. Well, the challenge is those students, when they're in lockdown, all have cell phones, and they immediately go to the cell phone and call mom, dad, and they have a certain version of what's happening that may or may not be accurate. And as it happens over time, just like that little telephone exercise we used to do, right? It becomes more and more exaggerated, more exciting, and before you know it, there's several individuals on campus with AR-15s, and that was not even remotely accurate as to what happened that day.
Dr. Martinez?
Well, the same thing, but I think I just want to add that most likely my colleagues will agree that our schools function very differently than what the public also understands. We have, for example, PE. It happens often outside in the playgrounds, and there are often no restrooms available outside for students. So the entrance to the building is constant, and though we have the safety mechanisms in place, not every student has an ID to go in and out. So the challenge is personnel, additional personnel, and also what to do in the event that something were to happen outside. So doors are locked, but then we also have those instances where so many students go in and out of that building. So the key is basically to keep the perimeter of the school completely sealed so that no one else can go through those back doors. But most of our schools were not equipped for situations like this. Many of our schools are older, and I'm speaking probably in general for the entire city and the country. So facing these new challenges is a different reality for us. But I think training is the key, and making sure that our protocols are being followed. And the other component is when they are not being followed, that we take the appropriate action, whether it be a personnel action or something to that nature, because if you don't take the appropriate action, then it becomes, there's really no consequences when you fail to make sure that the schools are safe. They mentioned about a door a rock by the doors. Well, who put that rock? And if we identify that individual, then we need to make sure that we take the appropriate action.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about how to address the learning loss that we suffered from the pandemic. You're watching ABC 7 Extra. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'd like to introduce you to Isai. Isai's life was saved by the Humane Society of El Paso, and you can help provide cuties like Isai with loving care when you tune in to the 29th Annual Telethon presented by Gin Path Services on August 6th at 4 p.m. right here on ABC 7. Make a donation, be a hero, and save a life.
Great news! Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso is expanding. That's right, construction's a must, so please pardon our dust while we prepare a bigger, better, state-of-the-art showroom and service experience for you. We're open during construction and fully stocked with the vehicles you love and prices you'll love even more. Like Elantras, Tucson, Santa Fe, Santa Cruzes, and even Palisades. All available with zero down. That's zero cash out of pocket. And interest rates as low as 2.79% APR for 60 months. Only at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso.
Mr. Rhodes? That was a little too close for anyone's comfort, mine included. I don't want to hurt anybody. The crosswalk stripes are sending you a message.
Stop for pedestrians. Got it.
And slow down.
I'll keep my eyes open from now on.
And we'll all get where we're going safely.
I want that, Mr. Rhodes.
I just love humanity. Does anybody need a hug?
600 ESPN El Paso is your source for sports. And get ABC 7 News updates weekdays from 7:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. 600 ESPN El Paso, a partner with ABC 7, where news comes first.
93.1 Kiss FM, today's best mix. Where Mike and Iris starts your day. Open the 93.1 Kiss FM mobile app.
Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra. We are now going to talk about the learning loss that all schools in Texas suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic. It's some good news here. The results are coming back in from the previous school year STAR test. It's showing here the number of students that met their grade level or above in math went up by 5 percentage points, although that percentage is still below pre-pandemic levels. But for reading, it is some really good news. The students that met their grade level went up by 9%, and that actually exceeds the pre-pandemic numbers. Really, my first question is, how have we seen a bounce back here in El Paso? Dr. Carmen, I'll start with you.
Certainly. So we've seen some bounce back, depending on the test, depending on the grade level. Our students were scoring at or above where they were pre-pandemic, but we still have areas that we know we need to improve upon. For example, you had students who may have left prior to the pandemic at the elementary grade level, and when they came back in the middle of their middle school or middle school to high school. So they didn't have that natural transition to those different levels, different buildings, and there's some difficulty with that, with the students adjusting to that. Then with your younger students, some of them were learning to read remotely and learning to do their initial math work remotely, and we know how they struggle with that. We've done a lot, though, this year working on the alignment and how our teachers are preparing their lessons and our PLCs so that we're closely aligned to the standards of what the state has required. We've always had intervention for our students as needed. Last year the number was probably larger than it had been in previous years. This year we think it will be more manageable. So we believe in Socorro ISD that we're right back on track, and we hope by this year we should be at or above pre-pandemic levels in every grade level.
Do you all feel that the same? Every district feel that same way, being at or above pre-pandemic levels at the end of the school year?
Yeah.
Well, I would say yes, but I do want to acknowledge that this is a multi-year process. You know, when you're dealing with students and their learning, depending on how significant the disruption was for any given child, as a system, we may be able to bounce back faster when you aggregate, but when you look at each individual child, it's going to be a multi-year process. And so we will continue to see gains, I would say, every school district year over year. But I do want to point out that it will be a multi-year process. It's not something that you can turn on a dime overnight. There are significant needs that our students have. I would say that in El Paso ISD, we did see significant growth. We had a 16% decrease in the number of students who did not meet standard, while we had a 12%, an average of 12% increase across the board of kids who were scored at approaches, meets, or masters. So we do see, you know, movement going forward. I would say that a lot of the work that we need to do is in the early grades, because our children who experienced the pandemic as they were entering the school system, I think have suffered the most significant loss. Learning to read is really a process that takes a lot of in-person learning. So behind the screen was difficult for a lot of our students. And when you couple that with wearing masks and the importance of phonics at that level, so I do believe that a lot of investment in our school district is at the front end of the continuum for reading, as well as numeracy. I think all of us have calendars that are really recognizing the fact that our children need more time and support. When you think about an equation where you want learning to be the constant, then time and support have to be the variable, right? Because when time and support are the constant, then learning becomes the variable. So we all have calendars. We're starting school on August the 1st. We've got intersessions worked into our calendars. This year, El Paso ISD was one of the only school districts that offered full-day summer school for the full month of June. So we know, again, it takes significant time and support to really work with our students and get them where they need to be. But there are systems in place for us to do that.
Are there new techniques being used, or is it really just more time with the students? Dr. De La Torre?
A couple things. I think that the test scores were very encouraging in the Ysleta Independent School District, especially Domain 2. And Domain 2 measures growth over the course of the year. And they were so marginal the year before that we were seeing double-digit growth that has really supported moving the academic needle for students. Achievement will take a little longer. That's Domain 1. Eliminating the gap, Domain 3, We were encouraged by the performance at our campuses, and then the college career readiness is domain 4, and those are the 4 domains that they use to arrive at a rating for the district as well as our schools, and that will be released, I believe, August 15th. Last year, we probably had the worst staff, faculty attendance that we've ever experienced. We had poor student attendance for all the right reasons. I mean, we were still in the middle of a pandemic. Either people were getting sick or family members were getting sick. So I estimated that rather than have 180 days with our kids last year, most of us probably got 150 days out of that school year where both the teacher of record and the student were in the classroom together.
Wow.
I think that's going to improve significantly this year. And if we were able to make that progress last year under those circumstances, I'm encouraged that this year, as Deanna said, you're going to see continued growth, and it will be something that happens over time. But our school districts will be back to a pre-pandemic performance level within the next year, maybe 2 years. I'd spoken to Mike Morath, and Mike Morath had asked me about 18 months ago how long he thought it would take. He's the commissioner of Texas Education Agency, how long it would take before we got back to pre-pandemic levels, and I told him 2-3 years. And he seemed to not be sure that that could happen. He thought it would be closer to 5-6 years. But we have a very unique community here. We know our students. Most of the teachers in our classrooms went to one of our school districts. They understand the culture, the expectations, the parents, the conditions and realities that these students live under. And they were once the very students that they work with. And I think it gives them that sense of urgency to really work hard to get these children back to where they need to get. I also like the idea that we all have 3-year-old programs. I think the full-day universal pre-K is going to be a game changer in the area of literacy. I think our schools are going to get a better product, for lack of a better word, from the pre-K program, far better prepared students when they get to kindergarten, and that'll translate into higher literacy rates at the 3rd grade. All of our school districts like seeing 8th graders take algebra in the 8th grade and pass the end of course exam. So there are a lot of things that I think we've come to embrace and appreciate as to what it takes to move the academic needle for kids who are in poverty, whose primary language is not English when they arrive, who have special needs, and then just the general population. And we're very good at what we do.
Parents, of course, want the best for their students. How can parents get involved to help with the gap, Dr. Martinez?
Well, we do encourage our parents to get involved at all of our schools. We have volunteer programs in all of our schools. We have after-school programs in which they can volunteer. But let me just go back a little bit to the specific things that we've done to address the learning loss. We partner with the state with what is called the Effective Schools Framework, and we adopted this framework for all of our schools. The framework requires all of our teachers to use high-quality instructional materials, and therefore we provided all the training for all of our teachers beginning. We already started, so they are using now this new curriculum. We saw a gain in our scores, but we still felt that we needed to do even more. So for the next 2 years, through a grant, we are able to get technical support from the state and also continue with implementing our plans across all of our schools. But now going back to parents, definitely all of our parents are always welcome. We always do a background check on all of them, making sure that they are there for the right reasons. But we do encourage them to come to our schools, give us a call, and we are definitely asking them to join us. The more volunteers we have in our schools, the better. And of course, during the time of COVID, we still need to be careful, but at the same time, we welcome them in our schools.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with ABC 7 Extra. Stay with us.
Hey, El Paso, your future is calling. It's time to imagine what's possible and dream big. We are ready to create a new path forward, helping you reach your goals and potential. Your passion is our purpose. Let's rise together.
Thank you for taking me home. It's so far.
Don't worry about it, Grandma. This will be fun. 2 chocolate milkshakes, please.
Did you get his number?
No, Grandma. Grandma!
Excuse me?
Some relationships get better with time. That's why I got a Crosstrek.
96% of Subaru vehicles sold in the last 10 years are still on the road. Love. It's what makes Subaru, Subaru.
Maintain the love of your new Subaru with 2 years of complimentary maintenance.
The
The New Mexico Supreme Court affirmed a $165 million jury verdict against FedEx for a highway crash.
We've gone to trial against FedEx. The offer was minimal, and we ended up with one of the largest verdicts in the nation that year. Every client of ours deserves their day in court if they want it.
We got one of the largest verdicts in the state of New Mexico, and we've consistently had the largest verdicts in our area. There's nothing scary about taking on anybody. I'm not afraid of them.
We're a trial firm. That's what we do.
A good education is key for every child, and ESC 19 Head Start is the best place for children to begin. Head Start is El Paso's premier preschool program for expectant mothers and children from birth to 4 years old. Our full range of services support early learning and development in high-quality educational environments. We also help parents with their educational and career goals with classes, training, and community resources. Call or visit us online to register today.
Hey El Paso, your future is calling. It's time to imagine what's possible and dream big. We are ready to create a new path forward, helping you reach your goals and potential. Your passion is our purpose. Let's rise together.
Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra. We are still joined by the superintendents from El Paso's top 4 school districts. And really, my question here for this segment is, how are the districts collaborating with each other this year? Dr. Martinez.
I think we have a fantastic group of leaders in our schools. We work very well together. We are actually are working to promote our schools, our school districts. We have a healthy competition, but at the same time, we respect each other and we collaborate. There's a foundation that now we are part of, and we're working together with the 4 school districts. And I'm really encouraged that we have the superintendents. We're no longer just criticizing each other, but rather working together to improve our schools. At the end of the day, these are our children, regardless of where they go, and it is our responsibility to work together to make sure that they get the best quality of education, regardless of whether they go to Isleta, Socorro, El Paso, or Clint. They are our kids in our community, and I am committed, as they are, to make sure that they get the best quality of education possible.
What kind of work are you all doing together? Is it sharing of information, test scores? What's the work that is being done?
Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to come together as a traditional ISD. We're called the Sun City Coalition of Schools. And what we would like to do is we'd like to remind our community and promote the idea that our schools aren't broken. And sometimes what's being implied from other organizations, the non-traditional schools, is that they somehow have a better program, a better product. And that's simply not true. We are required to have certified teachers. All of us have certified teachers. And it's hard to match the extracurricular and the co-curricular opportunities we offer students, whether it's athletics, the fine arts, clubs, organizations. The one thing the pandemic did demonstrate is that the ISDs were at the hub, were at the center of problem solving when it came to dealing with the pandemic and the steps that schools should take, as well as our outreach in the community by providing testing and providing all of the resources anyone in the community might need, including free breakfast, free lunch. So we play, I think, a very critical role in El Paso's economy, in El Paso's culture, and I think it needs to be respected. And for some time now, we have felt like there's always someone looking for an alternative. And I can promise you there's no alternative. The traditional independent school districts throughout the state can offer so much more than some isolated programs on an island doing their own thing, and in some cases seducing parents into believing that they can somehow deliver a better product, and that's simply not true.
Is there differences between the new charter schools or the different ways of learning that are popping up in El Paso and public schools? What can you offer that they can't? Ms. Sayabedra?
Well, what I would say is that what we've been offering is quality all along. I was watching the news last weekend, and there was a national report where there was a poll that was given to parents across the United States, and they asked them, do you value choice when it comes to your the education of your children? 74% of Americans responded that choice was important when they were considering their children's education. And so as a result of that, they also reported that school districts or the public school system is seeing anywhere from a 3 to 6% drop in enrollment. In El Paso, we see those trends. But what I would share is that there's plenty of choice in every public school system in El Paso ISD. We offer P-TECH programs, we offer early college high school programs where our students are earning industry certification, where they're graduating with associate's degrees, and they're well prepped for post-secondary education. You heard all of us talk about pre-K programming and universal pre-K. Early education is significant, especially in the populations that we serve. I think that something that we haven't talked about is the social and emotional learning that we address in the public school systems, which came to the forefront during the pandemic. Students need environments where there's opportunities for them to belong, opportunities for them to maximize their strengths. And we offer those things in public schools through athletics, through fine arts, through robotics, through a lot of different programming. It's a community. It truly is. And we, not only in the school is it a community, but we develop community in each one of our neighborhoods. And I think that that's important, and that's not something that you find in a charter environment, in a private school environment, and certainly not in homeschooling, right?
Dr. Carmen, is SISD offering anything new in their curriculum or program to entice kids with the response to these uptick of charter schools in El Paso to keep them, retain them inside public schools in the district?
Yes, sir, we are. In Socorro ISD, we've done a great job offering choices to our secondary students. Just as Dr. Delatorre and Ms. Ayvedra mentioned, fine arts, CTE, dual credit, et cetera, same as Dr. Martinez. We've offered those programs for a number of years. What we've done this year is extended some choices down to our elementary levels. So we have changed 2 of our traditional elementary campuses, one to a STEAM academy at Escontrias Elementary, and then at Paso del Norte Elementary, we are transitioning that to a fine arts academy. So students who have an interest or a love in those areas can come to those campuses, and in addition to their core instruction, they get instruction at the Fine Arts Academy in dance, in art, choral, instrumental music, digital graphics, things that in a traditional setting they might not have. So we've added some choices. We understand, Deanna's exactly right, the parents and students want those choices. We have the capability of bringing those into our ISDs and offering true choice with quality education, whereas some outside entities may not have that. We know, looking at the data, post-secondary, that our students succeed better once they get to college or universities. We have a higher percentage of our students who score a 3.0 GPA or higher when they go to college than any of the charters. So we know the end product is there, and we believe strongly in it. And when Dr. Delatorre invited us to participate in this coalition, we all embraced it. But in addition to getting the word out there, we also, when we have trainings that another district may not offer, we allow other teachers, counselors to come together. The Service Center, Region 19 Service Center does a great job of organizing some of that. So that's important as well, that we work together. And again, we do compete, but through this collaboration, we are working together and working together well.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you all very much for coming on the show. I wish you all luck in the upcoming school year. And thank you for watching ABC 7 Extra. I've been your host, Dylan McKim. Have a great start to your week.